Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 10th and tonight's classic is Carnival of Souls. Carnival of Souls is a 1962 independent movie directed by Herc Harvey. Over the years, it has become a cult classic and has influenced many notable directors, including James Wan, David Lynch, and George Romero. I watched it today and I have to say, I thought that this movie was pretty good. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. There are some problems with it, but I do like the core concept of it. Carnival of Souls is about a woman named Mary who was involved in a car accident where a car was I think it was like a street race or something, where the car that she was in fell off a bridge and into a river. She is the only one that makes it out alive, and she tries to continue with her life, and she ends up getting a new job. She is an organ player, so she gets hired to play the pipe organ at a church. And as she gets to the new town, she starts experiencing a lot of weird things. As there is this one specific man who keeps showing up that is following her, and nobody else seems to be able to see him except for her. And there's a bunch of other stuff, and she starts to get really freaked out about what's happening. I know that this was an independent production, but even looking back on it now, it still looks kind of cheap. And some of the production quality isn't that great either. A lot of times they dub in audio and the syncing isn't that great, but they actually use that to their advantage at some points. There are parts of the movie where something happens, there's this weird almost water spot effect that happens to the lens, and suddenly everything is completely silent except for the music and the sounds that Mary is making. And that's something where they actually took advantage of the fact that they didn't have the best audio, because they filmed those parts without sound and then they dubbed in only the stuff things that you're supposed to hear. While decently paced, even at 80 minutes, it still feels a little bit flabby. There's a lot of padding, especially considering this one male character who's constantly trying to hit on Mary, and it goes nowhere, and it's just not very entertaining watching them interact, but it takes up a sizable chunk of the movie. I was just hoping that they would get back to the horror movie part of this, because that's done very well. I do like the horror scenes in this movie. Aside from the man that keeps following her around, Mary keeps thinking about this abandoned carnival that's on the edge of town, and she keeps getting drawn to it, and she feels like that holds the answer as to what is happening to her. I really like the aesthetic of Carnival and Big Top, and I was kind of hoping that most of the movie would be in this carnival, but it's really not. Most of it's in the town, and the carnival is just in a few scenes. Far and away, the most famous thing about Carnival of Souls is its twist ending, but I won't be able to talk about that until the spoiler section. However, before I watched this, I was already told the basic idea of what the twist was, but even without it, I think I would have been able to guess it. I don't know if it's the most perfectly executed twist, but as a concept, it's very good. I feel like that's a pretty good way to sum up Carnival of Souls in general. As an idea, it's great. But due to, financial limitations, or maybe just mistakes that were made in the production or choices that didn't work out that well, it's not as great as it could have been. But considering for what it came from, it's a pretty good movie. And I can see how it became a classic over the years. While not nearly as good as some of the movies that it probably influenced, Carnival of Souls still does hold up. It's not the best thing ever, but it is still a pretty good scary movie. Okay, if you're actually planning on watching Carnival of Souls, leave now because here are the spoilers. I was told before even going into this that this sort of started the main character was dead the entire time twist ending. And even without that, I think I would have been able to guess that that's what they were going at, because not only did she appear I think it's implied it's hours and hours after the car crash, they're looking for the car in the river, and she appears out of the water hours later. But they also say a couple times, we have no idea how you possibly survived that. And of course there are the scenes where she suddenly becomes invisible and just disappears to everybody else. She tries to get people's attention and they don't listen to her. There's a lot of stuff like that that keeps hinting on the fact that she was actually dead this whole time. It's not like in The Sixth Sense where the dead character can only be seen by certain characters. In this movie, it seems like everybody can see her, so I don't think that she's a ghost at that point in the movie. I think that what they were trying to get at is that this is her spirit refusing to leave the world of the living, and all this horrible stuff that's happening to her is her slow descent into hell, because at the very end of the movie, you see a bunch of people with the same sort of makeup that the man that's been following her around is wearing, and they like attack her and they overwhelm her, and then her body completely disappears. Later on, you see like the local police go up there and they see like her footprints like keep going, and then they just stop. And then you cut to the crew that was trying to get the car out of the waterway at the beginning of the movie, and they finally find it, and her corpse is still in the car. More than any other, this movie reminds me of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from the beginning of this month. They are still good in their own right, but I feel like more than anything else, they sort of presented an idea for other movies to take inspiration from and execute that idea in much better ways. There's a lot of movies that I thought of when I was watching Carnival of Souls. Like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, it is still good though, and I would still say it's worth a watch if you're interested. Alright, thanks for listening, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.